do. Need a wheelbarrow to push around the dirt I'm a-digging through. Well, there's a wheelbarrow, it's the best by far, they say. He makes 'em deep and narrow, the wheelbarrow Johnny way. And I'll push my Studebaker up and down the hill. Gonna push my Studebaker from the mine to the 10-cent mill. Gonna push my Studebaker from that 10-cent mill. Gonna push my Studebaker full of gold to Placerville.
I'm Mary Corey. I'm the museum administrator for the El Dorado County Historical Museum. And this year it's a significant anniversary. It marks the 100th anniversary of John Studebaker returning to Placerville in 1912. He came here on April 16th. And we consider Studebaker kind of a hometown success story. He first came out to California in 1853 to mine for gold, but he very quickly found out that he could make more money, be quite much more successful if he was able to build and sell wheelbarrows to the miners. And we're very pleased to have an example of one of the wheelbarrows that Studebaker built here in the county museum's collection. They're very rare. Historical wheelbarrows got used until they fell apart and probably were burned for firewood. But Studebaker's wheelbarrow is quite unique because of its design, and this particular wheelbarrow was actually identified by John Studebaker when he came back to Placerville in 1912. The gentleman who owned this wheelbarrow showed it to Studebaker, who said yes, that was one of the ones he had made. It was in his design, and so we actually have it confirmed that this is an actual Studebaker wheelbarrow.
John Moeller Studebaker was born on October the 10th, 1833 in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. In 1836, the family moved to Ohio, and then in 1851 to South Bend, Indiana. In 1852, John's older brothers, Henry and Clem, founded the H&C Studebaker Company to manufacture wagons. Like others before him, John felt the lure of the gold rush and decided to try his luck in California. He set a record by building a wagon in 10 days. His brother Clem installed the ironwork. 19-year-old John then made a trade with the wagon train master, the wagon for 3 meals a day on the overland trip to California.
Well, my son is a moving west, needs the best dang wagon made. Well, son, there's one that makes the test, the wheelbarrow Johnny way.
The wagon's train's first stop was Council Bluffs, where young J.M. learned a lesson the hard way.
This dear good mother, just before I started, sewed $65 in gold in a belt, which I buckled round my body. When we got to Council Bluffs on the Missouri River, we had to stop for 3 days, and were soon beset by 3 Cardmonte sharpers and their capers. The capers gave us glowing descriptions of how they were winning money every day from those helpless gamblers, and they asked, "What is the use of going to California when you can win all the gold you want right here?" So I went out and got behind the building and took off my belt. As quickly as possible, I began to bet, but somehow the system didn't work, or luck was against me. We all left our money with those sharpers, and that is how I happened to have only 50 cents when I went to making wheelbarrows.
The trip to Hangtown took 5 months and 8 days. John arrived in Placerville on August 31st, 1853.
Of course, a big crowd gathered around us, and while we were trying to get them to talk about gold mines, they insisted on asking questions about what had happened in the state since they had heard from their friends. While the hubbub was going on, a man came up and asked if there was a wagon maker in the crowd. "Yes, sir," I answered, as big as life, with my 50-cent piece in my pocket.
The man looking for a wagon maker was H.L. Hines, a local blacksmith who repaired picks, pans, and stagecoaches.
I followed Hines to his shop. I remember it was a log house with the back wall made by digging into the hill. There were coffee sack bunks in which we slept, and in the middle of the room was a sheet iron stove on which the cooking was done. I explained that I had decided to see what he wanted me to do, and he said He wanted me to make wheelbarrows for the miners. He wanted 25 and would pay me $10 apiece. So I began the next morning. At the end of the second day, I got one wheelbarrow done. Hines looked at it. "What do you call that?" he asked, pulling on his old pipe. "I call it a wheelbarrow," I answered. "A hell of a wheelbarrow," was his comment, and he was correct, for as a matter of fact, the wheel was a little crooked, but I put up the best excuse I could. You asked me if I was a wagon maker, and I said I was. I didn't say that I was a wheelbarrow maker, but I think I can do better on the next one. He smiled grimly and said, "Go ahead." I got myself better tools and turned out a fair product, making a wheelbarrow a day.
Old John, he didn't make her no wagon built as well. Gonna ride that Studebaker all the way to Placerville.
The blacksmith shop was located on Main Street, midway between Bedford Avenue and Cedar Ravine, and the wagon shop was on the other side of Main Street next to the hill. Hines' business, with Studebaker as assistant, flourished. They made repairs on mining equipment, wagons, and built wheelbarrows. Both men saved their money and deposited in gold in the Adams Express Company by the plaza on Main Street. But Hines became suspicious of the Express Company. He knew other branches were short of funds and was worried that they might transfer gold from Placerville to another branch.
When the Adams Express Company failed, I had $3,000 in the bank. All the money I had in the world. Hines, my partner, had $22,000 in the same bank. Hines knew the Express people would try to get the money out that night, and without saying a word to anyone, Hines made up his plan. He hid in the brush back of the bank and just across the creek and watched. Sure enough, just as he expected, he saw the Express people creep out of the building at about 2 o'clock in the morning with the bags of gold. He trailed them and saw them put the money in old Joe Douglas's safe. The rest was easy for Hines. He was going to levy an attachment on the safe, and from what he saw, he was confident that there was enough money to pay us both. So he asked me if I wanted to stand in on the attachment suit. Of course I did, and we got out the papers bright and early. Douglas, the old sinner, denied that the money was in his safe, but the officer found it and served the attachment. And as there was no defense, we got the coin in short order, every dollar of it, while hundreds of others, after long waiting, received only 15 to 30%. Hines threw the money into a wheelbarrow and trundled it through the streets of Hangtown.
John Studebaker was in Placerville during the fire of 1856. The first fire in April destroyed many of the wooden buildings on Main Street, but the few stone or brick buildings survived. Some unfortunate businessmen quickly rebuilt their wooden buildings only to lose them in the huge July fire the same year. This fire started in the Union Hotel on the south side of Main Street, now the site of the Bookery store. The fire spread like a tornado. Before the ashes cooled, men poured into the community looking for work, and a massive building effort began. Stone and brick were the construction materials of choice. In a short time, old Hangtown rose like a phoenix from the ashes to become the city of Placerville.
You will remember we had to abandon the old hand fire engine in the street, and we took to the hillside. I was running for dear life to reach our little shop with our home and all our belongings. When I got there, the fire was also there. After the fire, the only thing left were the clothes on my back. But nobody seemed to be discouraged. We were right cheerful with our campfire on the hillside, cooking our grub over the coals, and then taking our night's slumber in our blanket under a manzanita bush or a pine tree. A new town went up like magic.
Old John, he didn't make her no wagon built as well. Gonna ride that Studebaker all the way to Placerville.
Placerville was called Old Dry Diggings by the first miners who arrived in 1848. They found an untouched ravine, a free-flowing creek with clear, pure water, surrounded by a forest of pine and oak trees. A large oak near the creek towered above all the rest. Early in 1848, R.W. Barkhurst built a crude wooden building beside the oak, calling it Placer Hotel. In 1850, Bruce Herrick purchased the property and it became known as Jackass Inn. As the inn grew in popularity, Mr. Herrick wanted to make way for a new two-story building to be constructed on the site.
Herrick, spare that tree, let not its branches fall. Here let it always be a warning to us all. For it was in 49, when our good town yet was young, 3 men for murder vile upon that tree were hung.
In 1853, Studebaker helped Bruce Herrick chop down the famous hangman tree. Herrick then built what we now call the Herrick Building over the site where the tree stood. Studebaker also carried bricks and mortar and helped construct the building. The importance of the large oak tree was and still is a symbol of pre-statehood early frontier justice. And so it was that dry diggings took on the name of Hangtown, and the creek flowing through the town became known as Hangtown Creek.
49er in Hangtown here for a day or two. Need a wheelbarrow to push around the dirt I'm a-digging through. Well, there's a wheelbarrow, it's the best by far, they say. He makes 'em deep and narrow, the wheelbarrow Johnny way. And I'll push my Studebaker up and down the hill. Gonna push my Studebaker.
In 1857, John received a letter from his brother Clem. The wagon business wasn't prospering. By this time, John had saved almost $8,000 working with Heinz and began thinking about returning to Indiana and investing in the family business. In 1858, he left Placerville and returned east by ship by way of San Francisco, Panama, and New York. In Indiana, John bought out his brother Henry's half interest in the H&C Studebaker Company. South Carolina had seceded from the Union, and John saw a demand for wagons surging in the event of war. Government purchasing agents offered H&C Studebaker its first major government contract. For the duration of the war, H&C Studebaker supplied the Union with wagons, caissons, ambulances, and carts to carry beer to the front. After the war, H&C was busy with civilian orders for reconstruction efforts in the South and national expansion westward. They were soon the largest wagon builders in the world, producing 1 wagon every 10 minutes. In 1898, Studebaker Brothers built a steam-powered wagon. The electric car came next. Neither did well. Other executives pressed for an internal combustion-powered car. They were manufacturing 75,000 wagons a year, but John predicted motor vehicles as the company's future.
My grandson is a-comin' north and he wants to take the wheel to visit me. He'll set forth in a brand new automobile. Well, grandson, what you need is the best car that is made. It's agreed no car exceeds the wheelbarrow Johnny way. And you can drive that Studebaker up and down the hill. You can drive that Studebaker, no finer car is built. Oh, John, he didn't make her, no car is built as well. Gonna drive that Studebaker all the way to Placerville.
In 1910, John wrote a public letter to the citizens of Placerville.
If I ever go to California again, I am going to come up, and if we can round up any of the Hangtown boys, I want you to understand that we will paint the town red and give some of the nabnobs of Placerville to understand what we had to do in those early days and what we could do. Every man's word in those days was law, and if he told a lie or took a jackknife that did not belong to him, we just strung him up on the first tree.
John, once called Wheelbarrow Johnny, returned to Hangtown in 1912, a visit about which he talked fondly.
So you would like to know what prompts me to make this trip to old Hangtown, would you? Well, this may be the last time I shall have a chance to see these old boys, and I just wanted to meet them around the table once more. We are getting along in years, some of us, and we like to talk over what happened when we were younger.
A few of his old friends met him at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco and accompanied him on a trip to Placerville. From San Francisco, they traveled up the Sacramento River by steamer and then from Sacramento to Placerville in two of Studebaker's touring cars. The streets of Placerville were decorated on April 16, 1912, in honor of John Studebaker's return. Printed signs saying, "We are glad you came back," were seen in the windows of the stores and homes. The El Dorado Republican and Nugget printed a special edition in honor of the occasion, and papers were delivered to the guests at the banquet. The Mountain Democrat described the celebration.
J.M. Studebaker, the millionaire manufacturer of South Bend, Indiana, arrived in Placerville accompanied by a party of El Dorado pioneers to once again look upon the little town where as a young man he laid the foundation for his fortune. The party, occupying two automobiles, were met a short distance down the road by the mayor and a committee of citizens and members of the Board of Trade and escorted into town.
A banquet was held in the Ohio Hotel. The menu was varied and unique with dishes titled Sluicebach Tailings flavored with chicken and Dead Man Ravine asparagus.
What you need is the best car that is made. It's agreed no car exceeds the Wheelbarrow Johnny way, and you can drive that Studebaker up and down the hill. You can drive that Studebaker, no finer car is built. Oh, John, he didn't make her, no car is built as well. Gonna drive that Studebaker all the way to Placerville.
John Studebaker spoke, recalling his days and experiences in Hangtown.
There are so many things that combine to make success in life. As I have explained, I probably would never have made my start if it had not been for the various experiences in old Hangtown and on the frontier where lessons are burned into the hearts and minds of men in a way they cannot forget. You probably know that the company which I am connected with has enjoyed a certain measure of success. We have a large factory and employ 10,000 men. It was the money I got out of that busted bank and the savings of 5 years that went into the business of Studebaker Brothers, and so far as I am concerned, it all came from the start I got in old Hangtown.
Need a wheelbarrow to push around the dirt I'm a-digging through. Well, there's a wheelbarrow, it's the best by far, they say. He makes 'em deep and narrow, the Wheelbarrow Johnny way.
My connection to the John Studebaker wheelbarrow races is that I'm a member of Placerville Kiwanis. In 2004, I was the president of the club, so 2003 was the race that I was the chairman of. Every member of the Kiwanis Club helps out putting on the event. In the 30s, they decided to commemorate John Studebaker's connection with a wheelbarrow race at the fair. And it was the Clampers who started it. So they started this race in 1938. It has continued ever since, except for World War II. They stopped it in World War II. In about the 1960s, the Placerville Kiwanis took over the race, and they have done it ever since.
So growing up in El Dorado County, I was in 4-H, raised hogs, chickens, and did that. Well, when I got older, I still wanted to be involved at the county fair. Did some hay bucking and some grape stomp, but it doesn't really fit until I found the wheelbarrow races. Really like the John Studebaker wheelbarrow races. It's really a great event.
The way the race happens is that each category, you have the kids, the teens, the adults, and so forth. Each one has a weight requirement. And when you start the race, you're started with a wheelbarrow, a gunny sack, and a gold pan. And back in the early days, they used to have a shovel too, but that got pretty dangerous, so they took that away and made the gold pan. You have to go to the first obstacle, which is a pile of sand, and it's called the ore pile. So you have to go to the ore pile to get however many pounds you think you can fit into your gunny sack and end up the race with that amount of weight. So if the requirement is 50 pounds of ore, then you fill up your gunny sack and you're guessing that whatever that is in your gunny sack is 50 pounds of ore, but you have to race the whole race with that amount of weight.
So the very first time I did the race, okay, I had to figure out what 50 pounds was. Well, I hadn't really done the race before, really didn't know what to expect. Loaded my sack full of ore, and when I finished that race, well, first of all, I didn't know if I was going to finish the race. Everyone finished in front of me, and I was in dead last. I knew I had too much weight, but it was the crowd that got me through. They got on their feet, they started stomping their feet on those grandstands, and I kept going. Finished the race, and that was what it was about. Turned out I had 78 pounds, way more than the 50 I needed.
You're disqualified if you don't have your weight. So sometimes people have lost the race by having an ounce or so less than that required amount, which is a shame when you come in first, finish the race first, but you don't have the proper weight, you're disqualified. So some of the obstacles are that you have the log jam, which is a bunch of logs in a sand pile that are helter-skelter going through, and you have to push, pull, or carry your wheelbarrow through that. There's the gold mine, and you have to go up and over it and around and through, so it's loose dirt on both sides, so sometimes it's pretty tough getting up the top. There's the switchbacks through the Sierras, which goes up and down the edge of the racetrack, which is like a 30-degree angle. But I think the toughest one is the water hole. And the water hole, after a tough race, having that water hole is pretty nice to cool off and cool down, but it's still tough because it's slipperier than anything coming out. It's mud, and it's pretty brown.
So I do the race every year because I like the challenge. I like the challenges of it. I do it because it's something that I get to train for, and I think that physical activity is really important. And I do it because of the people there, because of the spectators that are watching and the other competitors that do the race. It really is a great thing.
I'll push my Studebaker up and down the hill. Gonna push my Studebaker from the mine to the 10-cent mill. Gonna push my Studebaker from that 10-cent mill. Gonna push my Studebaker full of gold to Placerville.
When Studebaker came here to Placerville in 1912 as kind of a reunion, he was at that time president of the Studebaker Automobile Company. And the Studebaker Company is considered one of the very few, if not the only, wagon-making company that successfully transitioned to automobiles. And it was under our John Studebaker's leadership that happened. We're very pleased to have one of his wheelbarrows on display inside the museum, as well as a number of other Studebaker wagons that were manufactured over the years. We have a sheep herder's wagon that has been restored, and it started out as a Studebaker farm wagon, and there's a wonderful green carriage that was built by Studebaker brothers as a wagon that was used here in the county, and it was donated to the museum by Supervisor Sweeney's mother, who was quite a collector of historical items and a great supporter of the county museum.
And push my Studebaker up and down the hill. Gonna ride that Studebaker, no finer wagon built. Oh, John, he didn't make her, no car is built as well. Gonna drive that Studebaker all the way to Placerville.